I've got 12:30. So I'm going to welcome everyone to the Distance Learning and Technology virtual conference. I'm very excited that you're joining us this afternoon. And we're very excited to be able to bring to you great presentations from educators across the country. I'd like to introduce to you Penny Pearson. Penny is a coordinator for distance learning projects with the Outreach and Technical Assistance Network at OTAN in Sacramento, California. OTAN is a state leadership project in California supporting all adult learning programs with WIOA Title II funding, that's state leadership money. She has over 20 years experience in adult education, from teaching career and technical education to providing workshops on integrating educational technology, providing support in online and distance education, and guiding OTAN's professional development projects, such as the Digital Leadership Academy. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Penny Pearson. Thank you, Penny.
Well, thank you, Deb. Appreciate that nice introduction. My hair is longer now, I noticed from that photo, but I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here so I can give the information to all of the folks. And hopefully you will simply see a blank screen until I get my PowerPoint presentation up. And you guys can give me a little shout out in the chat pod telling me that things are okay and you can see them. Let me make sure I have my Zoom open where I can actually see what's going on. Sometimes that can be a challenge. So as Deb said, I am working with the Outreach and Technical Assistance Network. You really don't need to know much more than that, other than I've been doing this for quite some time, and I'm very passionate about working in adult education. And just a little bit more about me is, not only am I coordinator, and I've been doing this for quite some time, but I have been the one person who kind of beats the drum loudly for open educational resources, which we're going to talk about today. But that also lends itself to understanding about what I'm going to talk about, as well as this licensing. And I do have a certification in that, though I'm not a lawyer. It's just a way for me to help others understand about this whole thing called open educational resources. And I'm going to go ahead here and I'll ask Anne-Marie or Deb to go ahead and turn off my camera, just so you don't have to watch me for this whole thing. And we'll go over what we're doing today and move ourselves right along. So this is our basic agenda. So we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at defining open educational resources. Then we're going to talk about this licensing. I have a short video I want to show you that kind of will give you a good big picture view of what is traditionally, and I call this movement toward open educational resources. They have been around quite a long time. I think some of the first open resources were released way back in 2001, believe it or not. And then I want to be able to spend some time to work with you in discussions and questions. And then I'll spend a little bit of time toward the end about looking for these things and giving you some resource sites that might be helpful. So we need to start off first with a very official definition of what our open educational resource is. Now, this is actually a 10-year-old definition. It came originally out of the U.S. Office of Educational Technology and the National Education Plan way back in 2010. Believe it or not, since that time, they have actually removed the definition, and there's just an assumption of folks using open educational resources. But as you read the information on this slide, I want you to take a second and just think about what this is saying and then apply it towards your teaching practice. What does that mean to you? And if you can just put a little note in the chat pod, how you react to this, what do you sense with this, what kind of questions do you have? And then again, I'm going to try to go ahead and get my my little chat pod back up again, if I can, and get this where I can actually see what's going on. And unfortunately, I am not seeing that. Okay, hold on. I'm finding it here.
Try that, that Windows key on your keyboard.
Yeah,
it always does
there
that.
We go. It's actually, it just hit it, so that happens sometimes. So, yep, I see Jessica's given an answer, used for any legal. Okay, I'm just reading these as these go through, as we go through. So one of the key things here is I've highlighted those areas that typically garner questions. This whole thing about reside in the public domain. Okay, what does that mean? Under an intellectual property license. Okay, what does that mean? Permits sharing, accessing, repurposing, including for commercial purposes, and collaborating with others. Now people go, oh, wait a minute. Okay, what does this actually look like? So I want you to just kind of keep this definition in mind, and we're going to move forward and say, okay, what can be items that could be classified as an open educational resource? Okay, so let's take a peek at what that might be. Do you use any of these things? Do you use podcasts or audio? Do you use simulations? Do you use music maybe when you are working with creating lessons for your learners? Do you have lesson plans? Yeah, I'm seeing lots of yeses. Yes, 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 yes. All of these types of things, pretty much anything that is subject to intellectual property rights, aka copyrights, can be an open educational resource. So if you think about that in that big, broad sense of the term, that's a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, we have gotten into this habit, and you do not have to admit this, class, but you or your learners may do things like, oh, I need to do a PowerPoint presentation, so I'm just going to go and grab a copy of this picture off of this website, and I'm going to put it in my PowerPoint presentation. Do you think that that is a violation of copyright? Now you can say yes or no in the chat pod. So I got a big yes. I got a maybe. I got it can be, it could be, can be, no, could be, source. So you're thinking along the right lines, but basically I would like you to put this little mantra in your head. Anything on the internet is protected by copyright unless it specifically states otherwise. And I want you to understand that I've seen this happen to some of our teachers in California, where their learners have created materials and they've posted them to a public school website. And they received a cease and desist order from big corporations like Disney. So we got to make sure that we be careful, okay? And Elvira, I have the information in the notes of the presentation, so hopefully that will help you as we move along forward. So we have things that can be set aside as digital textbooks, curriculum, lesson plans, apps. YouTube Music, they have actually a Creative Commons license, and they allow you, when you're a user, to use it, but you make the choice. So you have to be very careful and understand how those materials can be used. So let's move forward. Remember that whole definition of saying, you know, intellectual property license or in the public domain. So we need to understand what is public domain versus an open license. I love public domain. Public domain is your friend, okay? But when you're dealing with intellectual property, you really want to look at finding those materials that were the owner, the intellectual property creator, has released their rights. They say, I don't care. Anybody out there in the public can use this photo, this image, this whatever it may be, because I release those rights. I have no claim to the copyrights. This is no longer my intellectual property. I have given it to the public. So hopefully that makes sense so far, okay? Public domain is your friend. An open license works a little bit differently in that the ownership of that item is still retained by the creator. It is their copyright. It's their intellectual property. So if I take a picture of a polar bear, that's my intellectual property. By the virtue of me clicking that shutter on the camera, it is now mine. I created it. If I jot down a plan for a new mousetrap on a napkin in a restaurant, that is now my intellectual property. I created it and it is protected under that copyright. Whereas an open license allows me as the intellectual property holder, I retain the copyright, but I grant certain broad rights to the public to use my material. So I give these rights, and we're going to go over what this can be as we move along in learning about open educational resources. So I want to get a quick sense. You can use the chat pod or you can use the yes/no buttons. Can you see the difference between public domain and an open license? Public domain, open license. Okay, I'm seeing lots of yeses. That's good. And I'm looking at some yeses on my other box here. That's good. All right. So we've got that down. So now the big question is, this open license, how does that work? What does it look like and how do I get it? So we're going to talk next about what are called the 5 R's of open. Now, this has been a big process over many years about what defines an open educational resource. So let's first talk about what are these 5 open, 5 R's, I should say. So let's take a look at this next slide. So the 5 R's of being open mean that you as the intellectual property holder, you still have the copyrights to it, but you allow someone to do these 5 things. They retain the property, they retain the picture, they can reuse it, revise it, remix it, and redistribute it. These are the foundational 5 R's of an open educational resource. The design being that this type of license provides the greatest distribution and sharing of that resource across the planet. Open educational resources are not something that are just in the United States, they are worldwide. Okay, so do we get an idea of this whole process of openness means we can do these things with our property, and when we look for somebody else's property, they can license it under these terms. So far, so good? Looks like we're doing okay.
Everybody appears to understand.
Yeah, Tiffany, we may have to put aside that teachers pay teachers thing. I have my opinions, but I'll just leave those for later. Got it. Good, good, good. Everybody's got it. So now I'm going to pause for a second, and I want you to watch a little video. It's only a couple of minutes long that will kind of explain this from some of the big head honchos out there. So let's see if I can make this actually run. There we go.
Yep, we're good.
Educational resources are automatically copyrighted when you create them under U.S. copyright law.
So let's say that I wrote a textbook, for example. I own that and nobody can use it without my permission. When we openly license that textbook, what we're doing is we're giving a license, we're giving permissions to the public to use that book under the terms of the license.
Licenses are a part of the copyright system all around the world. They're used by big companies, like when a clothing manufacturer wants to sell a superhero t-shirt. And so licenses are part of the fabric of copyright law. But all of those licenses are negotiated one-to-one. So when a company wants to use a text or a song or a character or part of a movie that belongs to a different rights holder, they have to have their lawyers sit down with the other lawyers, and it takes time and money.
So adding a Creative Commons license to a work is like saying, hey, this resource is free for you to use however you want.
The basic Creative Commons license is the CC BY license, or the Creative Commons Attribution license. And that's the most basic Creative Commons license. And all it says is you can use this work, this copyrighted thing, this photograph, this book, this song, if you attribute it to me, the creator.
The reason a lot of educators and governments more and more are choosing that license is that the only requirement is to give proper attribution to the author, to the original creator. That's really easy to do. It also allows you to remix those works with other openly licensed works in a very easy way.
And teachers have always given each other materials, and if you know the person you're sharing the materials with, you can give them permission. But when you want to share materials with teachers across the country and potentially teachers across the world, you need a standardized way to do that. And that's what the Creative Commons licenses are.
So what did you think about that? Just quickly in the chat pod. Oh, lots of good Lots of good questions. There could be, Olga, yes, makes sense so far. So, yeah, oh yeah, Jennifer, there's a lot of confusion because you gotta spend some time in this. This is something that really takes a few minutes to wrap your head around, and then you actually have to practice it. And what I would recommend is, as you work with your teachers and developing materials or developing your lessons, start talking to each other about this. So we'll try to kind of keep an analogy here of I am going to create a lesson plan with a teacher guide of how we're going to go forward with my lesson, right? Because I need to understand this licensing that they were just talking about. Open educational resources have those 5 R's, all right? And in order to maintain those, we need to use a licensing system. It's basically a permission slip. Think of it that way. Find and figure out what the permissions are on materials you want to take, and then you decide what you want to license materials that you create. Okay, so I see Gloria says, what about if it's other things created by someone else? That person owns that intellectual property, and they can choose whether or not they will share it with you under one of these licenses. So the most open license is this area up here. And I don't know if you can see my mouse pointer, but this most open is this green area up here. This includes, these icons mean something different, and we're going to go through each one of them. But this green zone, as I call it, is what will fall under the completely open license. It meets all 5 of those R's, okay? And this is where I personally like to stay as an instructor, because I then am very sure how I can use the materials that I find from other teachers in my work. Now, there are more licenses available. Creative Commons created 6 licenses, okay? I'm not counting public domain because that's not a license, okay? But Creative Commons has 6 licenses. We're not counting public domain. So in this list here, this CC0 with the 0, it's got the slash through it, is for public domain. The ones that they were talking about in the video are the CC BY, and that's Creative Commons Attribution. Give credit where credit is due. The next one is CC BY, the little guy standing in a circle. And then next to it is a circle with this kind of universal arrow going around in a circle. SA, CC BY SA, which stands for share alike. Okay, so we're sticking to the green zone right here, and these are the most open licenses, meaning that you have those, you can adhere to those 5 R's. Down below here, this yellow area, yellow always to me represents caution. Be careful. And that's because the copyright owner has restricted some part of those 5 R's. Okay, they're saying there's some things that you can't do. And we're going to go over each one of these, okay? So I'm going to switch to another slide that has these icons in the way you will likely see them out in the world, okay? So here they are. The first one, the first column, the left side is CC BY, that's Creative Commons Attribution. The one underneath it is CC BY SA, Creative Commons Attribution, Share Alike, okay? Then you have these others down here. These are the most open because public domain is not included here. Remember, there's 6 Creative Commons license. Public domain is not a license. So the next one is a little more restricted. Not only do you need to provide attribution, that's the BY, but the NC, what do you think that stands for, those letters? See if somebody pops that into the chat. No copy, I like that, but it's actually non-commercial. So it means that that cannot be sold to someone else. The person who created it says, no, you can't sell this. You can give me attribution, you can use it, but you can't turn around and put it into something that is being sold. The other items here all have attribution, so I won't keep talking about attribution. These others are non-commercial, share alike. That's a little more restricted because we're not allowing the 5 R's. This equal sign means no derivatives. No derivatives. So what that means is that if I have released a photograph under Creative Commons Attribution, okay? And I add no derivatives here. So my polar bear that I took a picture of. Under CC BY, I would say, all you have to do is give me credit for taking this picture. I don't care if you color that polar bear pink. That's fine, you know, but just give me credit that I took the picture. The CC BY no derivatives say, you can use my picture, but you cannot change that polar bear to pink, okay? So it's just a restriction. It is, derivatives are making a change, making something else from it. So there are some things that are offered through a Creative Commons license such as this, but you cannot change it, all right? So the next one at the bottom, probably the most restrictive, is attribution, non-commercial, no derivatives. And you think, well, wow, you know, that's really restricting things. But if you think a minute, how many of you use and or watch TED Talks? It's one of my favorite things. I love TED Talks. TED Talks are resources you can use, but they're under this most restrictive license. You must give attribution, you cannot sell it, and you cannot change it. So I have a lot of teachers that want to edit TED Talk videos, and I'm like, you can't do that. You can't make a derivative from it. You can fast forward or scrub through the video to get to where you want to go, but you can't chop it up into little pieces, okay?
Penny?
Yes.
Excuse me. So would you say, could you just define derivatives one more time? I think someone was still having some questions.
Derivatives is you are making something else from that product. So if it was a photograph, you are going to maybe use Photoshop, and you're going to add a saddle to my polar bear, and you're going to put, you know, a Wookiee riding the polar bear. Well, that's a derivative. You've made changes to that original thing. Okay, and if you think about it as a book or, you know, an article, folks will say, you can't change this. You can use it as it is, but you can't change it. You can't edit it. You can't chop it up. Okay, does that help? And neighbor, you're absolutely right. Use markers for use in YouTube videos. Any other clarifications for derivatives?
I don't.
Trying to kind of scroll through here.
Yeah, we've got some questions. Does that include short versions of something?
It depends on how it's licensed. Because the answer is probably yes to almost. If I can make a 1-minute video, and it can be about, you know, how to make a cup of tea, and I can choose, I as the creator choose how it is licensed. Because remember, I hold the intellectual property license, the copyright on that video. By using Creative Commons licenses, I make the personal choice how I want my stuff to be used. Okay, this always gets to be kind of like, you know, your attendees are getting that, you know, wow, this is a lot, this is confusing. Because open educational resources are so powerful, the Creative Commons license, the most open licenses, those attribution and share alike, are what teachers love, because you're not restricted from doing derivative work. You can change that article or you can edit that video as long as the original property owner or intellectual property owner gives you permission through this licensing structure. Now, a lot of our teachers don't know about this licensing structure, okay? That's why webinars like this can at least get you talking about it, doing a little research on it, working with other teachers about how this can work, because open educational resources are really gaining ground in many areas, not only within government and public institutions, but also schools and private industry, even when they're working with other industry partners. So it is something that's going to be around a while, and I think we just need to be aware of how do we spot these licenses, all right? So I'm going to move on. These are the general icons, but I have another slide here that basically sees what you will look for, because these icons, you'll start to see these on web pages. You'll start to see them in terms of use. You'll start to see them in conditions and things like that. And This particular graphic that's here was developed through Creative Commons out of New Zealand, and I think they did a really nice job because it shows not only the icon and then the text of what that means. So Creative Commons attribution and Creative Commons attribution share alike. Each one of them then has two questions that a lot of people ask, and that's this whole concept about commercialism. And it's a very complex question, but it is something that as an individual who is a creator, you have to make the decision of how you will license your work. Now, a lot of folks get very nervous about this and say, oh, no, I don't want somebody taking my stuff and making money off of it without talking to me. That is your right. You created it. You have the copyright. You can protect it. You do not have to use these licenses. However, I do want you to be cognizant of these licenses when you want to go and take somebody else's work. All right? Because other people like myself, I will license my work and I will tell you how you can use it. And I want you to respect that. Right now, there isn't a way to track all of these licenses. It's mostly, you're going to have to do your own legwork to see if somebody's like stolen something, which is very difficult. I understand that. But I'm talking from an educational point of view. I believe that we as teachers should be looking for and licensing our own work under Creative Commons and open educational resources. But Elvira, these charts are not licensed in the terms of they are not restricted. They are under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. It's at the very bottom of this chart from the Royal Society of New Zealand. They've marked this chart of how it's licensed. And I think it's kind of funny that they're licensing a chart of Creative Commons licenses with Creative Commons. So at any rate, we can certainly go through. We're going to go out and visit the Creative Commons site. I see Anne-Marie has put that in the link. So, but we're going to go and visit that ourselves. So each one of these items has a different value, all right? And this is a very personal choice. And that's probably my biggest comment I'll make to anybody, because you have to decide how you will license. And I know that all of you are sometimes the folks that create a lot, right? You might use any of these types of tools and services. You may work on Google Docs or Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, any of those things. And do you share amongst yourselves? Probably. But do you ever think about, well, when I'm sharing this with Anne-Marie, I'm going to pick on her, what is she going to do with it, right? What is she going to do with it? So I want to know that she is going to share it with other people. I want to know that she'll do the same things I'm doing and share it with others. So that would be an attribution share alike license. But I'm not restricting her if she wanted to edit that thing that I gave her, add to it, change it in some way. I don't have any problem with that, because you know what happens? I can come back to Anne-Marie and look at the changes that she made to my lesson plan and go, wow, you've made some terrific changes. I'm going to use this. And because I'm asking her to share alike, the license is the same. So I can take what she added to it and make my stuff even better. Sharing is what we do as teachers. And I truly believe that if we understand this process and use open educational resources, not only to help ourselves, but we also then can help each other, okay? So you have to make the decisions as a creator. Then we'll go in and look at how do you share your work? How do you actually license it, okay? But I want you to understand that you are also going to look for materials that are also licensed in a way that you can use it. And I want to make sure you understand that just because it has a highly restrictive Creative Commons license doesn't mean you can't use it. It just means that you can't do those things like chop it up into little pieces or do something else with it, like trying to sell it in something, in a packet or whatever. It is an entirely personal choice. And if, oh, Anne Marie says, oh, and what if you don't like the changes I made? Then that's fine, because now you own that thing that you borrowed from me because I licensed it in that way. It is an open license. You have a right to retain it. It is now yours. You have made changes to it under those conditions that I applied, which in this case were, all I want you to do is to share it with somebody else. You'll make it better, you'll make it terrific, and it's shared with somebody else. Spread the sharing love, so to speak. Okay, so let's go. I want to just pause for a second because I didn't get a chance. Sometimes the chat goes really quickly. So are there things that I might have missed? And I'll look to Deb and Anne Marie to tell me if there's something here that I can take care of.
Well, there was someone that was asking about like a section of a video. I know that I had an instructor one time that took little sections of about 6 videos of the way a teacher taught something to talk about teaching styles, and used, you know, and just said it was okay to do that because I only used a small part of the video. I think that was somebody's question.
Well, and we get into a very sticky area here because we have other portions of copyright law that come into play when we are in a classroom with 4 walls. And I'm sure you've all heard of fair use. And fair use is great. Fair use is designed to be used in what I will call a closed system. It's in a room. You're only showing it to this classroom of 30 students. But when we move out into the world of the internet and this cloud-based environment that we have, the internet itself being so open, that's where we need to be careful, because by putting somebody else's stuff out on the web without their permission can get very sticky with intellectual property rights. That's why this licensing is so important. Whether or not you write a book and you put this license as a printed license page in your book, or whether you're creating a PowerPoint presentation and you put the license at the end of the slide, the idea is that you're telling other people how your intellectual property can be used.
And
So,
then, excuse me,
yeah,
sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
I was
Deb.
just going to say, and then Gloria was asking, so I can create a PowerPoint, say, with other things from others, as long as I know they had an open license and I credit them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And some people, you'll notice on this graphic here, I have, tell me, what is this license down here at the bottom? Somebody pop that into the chat pod for me. Zoom is a different question, so we might have to pause that one. Barbara, when you say they use different symbols, they should use the Creative Commons symbols that I presented here. Now, that doesn't mean they might have different terms of use on their pages, like say a web page. And unfortunately, I don't know about you, but how many of you go in and read those terms of use on web pages? Not very many of us do that. I'm one of those people that's like, oh no, I got to see exactly how I can use this stuff. All right. So yes, Jessica and Deanne, this license is attribution, and this is a link here that says conversation. That links you directly to the author of this work, the creator. The title of this image is Conversation, and when I click this link, it tells me what type of license it is. I see it by the virtue of the icon, CC BY or Creative Commons Attribution, but I can actually go and see the underlying data that shows me what this is, okay? So that's called a proper attribution: title, author, source, and license. TASL is the little acronym I use. And you don't have to put it on every slide, because I get people like, oh, I don't want all that stuff on my slides because it looks ugly. That's okay. Put it on an end slide that says, you know, credits for whose materials that you used. Any others?
I'm looking. You can use markers for use of YouTube videos for class assignments and not need to modify. Neighbor, do you understand that one?
Yes, yes, I do.
Okay.
There's ways in the share that you can actually say start at minute 5 instead of, you know, starting right at the beginning. And teachers use that quite a bit. Watch between 5 minutes and 8 minutes of this video without having to chop it up into little pieces.
Catherine Narvez, I think of licensing like the rules at a park. Maybe it's a private park. The public can't use it without permission. And even if you get permission, there are rules. Maybe
Yep.
it's a public park. There are restrictions, no skateboarding, leash dogs, etc. Maybe the park is owned by your buddy who lets you do whatever you want. So if you come to a park, read the rules and don't assume every park belongs to your buddy.
Yeah. Yeah,
Cute.
that's a great analogy. I like that. And I see Barbara was asking about the symbols. These symbols here are pretty universal. There's only one other one that is actually licensing software, and that's called a GNU license, GNU. It's this funny little character with big horns like a ram. But in terms of licensing, this is a pretty much a universal worldwide set of icons that all the participating nations, which are like almost all of them, I can't remember what the final count is, but it is a way that we can then visually recognize these licenses. So let me just run through here. Yeah, Gloria, using an end slide like a bibliography. Yep, absolutely. Yep. Okay, so I want to end my share here because, well, I will in a second. I'll show you this slide because I want to go out and show these. And our time is, how are we doing? We got about 15 minutes. So if you are going to search for open license material or Creative Commons license material, please do not simply type in a search term into Google. Everybody's going, what? You will not get Creative Commons license materials. I will show you some other sites here that they're linked on the slide set. So when you get it, you can come back to it and go and take a peek. In the meantime, I'm going to bring this over. I hope we stopped the share. I hope it stopped. Did it stop for you guys?
Yes, it did.
Okay, let me bring up this other page just to make sure we got it here. So, oh, and this little bar, always have to move it. Let me move it out of the way here. So the first and foremost is Advanced Google. How many of you have ever used this? So some of you use it all the time. Some of you don't. And the reason why this is so important is that, hopefully you guys can see that. Maybe I need to zoom in a little bit. Here we go. Does that help?
Yes, that does.
So you can put in keywords, this is the normal way most of us do this. We just type in, you know, like they've got this example, tricolor rat terrier. Okay, or we can use phrasing. That's the whole thing, this phrase. I need these words together. So these are ways that you can use this advanced search for getting exactly what you want. Because I don't know about you, I do not have the time to go through 12 million hits off of Google. But down here at the bottom, you have some other ways to narrow your results. So you can search by language, regions, the time. I like this one when I'm doing research because I want to find things that have been published within the last year, not something that was 15, 20 years ago. And you can specify that in this advanced search option. And that's this google.com/advanced_search. It will take you right to it. This last one is the important one, usage rights. Find pages you are free to use yourself. When you drop down this list, you will see that they do not use the icons, but they use the type of license that you want to find. So I would choose one of these if I was looking for whatever I'm looking for, okay? So this is something I encourage you to use. Try to avoid just typing in the search bar in Google, especially when you're looking for materials for your students and yourself. So on this page, I have several other resources that have open educational resources on them. And one of my favorites is Creative Commons. So I'm going to go to that site here. It's creativecommons.org. Anne-Marie posted it in the chat earlier. And this is where I can come and find out what's happening in the world of Creative Commons. So it is a nonprofit, so they will ask you for money every now and then. But then they have a lot of these collections. They have over 1.6 billion works that are licensed with Creative Commons. And you'll notice down here at the bottom, and these are the things you're going to start looking for. Hopefully you can see this where my mouse pointer is down here, where I have the icons. So it's Creative Commons attribution. And when you float your mouse pointer there, it'll pop up with the version of the license. But I want to show you how you can license your own work. So I'm going to go back up to the top of this page where it says share your work. So I'm going to click on this, and it's going to bring me to a page with a very short form. So they have some great resources here. So you can look at, the links that are here, some information and ideas about how you can use these different licenses. Licensing considerations are very important. It is a way for you to make the right decision for your material. And here's how you choose a license. You figure out what the features are that you want, add any optional information, and you get the license. So let's see how hard this will be. So I'm going to click Get Started. And here we go. Oh, we've got a new license chooser. So I have the features of the license I want to choose. Allow adaptations of your works to be shared. Yes, I want them to share it. Do I allow commercial uses of your work? Yeah, I don't care. I want to share. So when I choose those two options, I get a CC BY license. This is called a free culture license. It falls under those 5 R's of an open resource. If I change any of these things, such as, no, I don't want to allow commercial use, now it's no longer considered a completely free and open resource. It doesn't mean it's not useful. It doesn't mean somebody can't use it. You are just putting the terms on that they can't use it for commercial purposes. And that is your decision. So when I'm going to go back to yes, and then I have this section here, help others attribute you. Remember, most of these licenses require attribution. You don't have to do this. This part is optional, but it helps folks who are looking at this, both searching for things online and searching under Google Advanced Search, whatever you choose. It is a way for others to know how to give you credit. So when I do this, I can put in the title of the work, OER for adult education. I can attribute that work to either my name personally or to somebody else or to an organization. I want to put in that I'm going to put in the whole URL here. I'm going to attribute it to my work. And if I had my own personal web page, maybe I could put that in here. If this is an online document of some kind, like on a OTAN web page buried deeper into our website, I could put that here. Once I fill this out, look what I get. This is everything. That's it right there. The title, the author, the license. Title, author, source, and license. It's all right there. And if you wanted to put it, you could just copy and paste this into Word. Not a problem. The hyperlinks work and everything. Or if you want to put it on a web page, you would just simply copy and paste that into your coding for your website. Okay? There is wonderful resources here on Creative Commons. And I really hope that those of you that are looking to build something new for your learners, look at these items, try to decide how you're going to license it. And it works, this is just, I'm going to copy and paste. I didn't have Word open, but literally I just copy and paste this into, it can be into Word, it can be into PowerPoint, you can put it in a cell in Excel, you can put it, on Open Office, any of these things that are, allow you to copy paste. It will work. Each one of these areas here has it's a hyperlink that will send the user, whoever wants to use my materials, out to where I filled out that information. I said attribute it to Penny Pearson, but this link is actually to OTAN because that's what I put in there. If I had my own information, my own website, it would work here. So I know we're running out of time, but let's move on to a couple of areas that you can, this is for you to license your own work. But let's look at finding works that are already licensed that you can use. One of my favorites is finding organizations that are willing to share their items. Let me see. Oh, I don't think I opened it up. So I'm going to show you this first one, which is called OER2Go. So if you are looking for, Algebra to Go, this is out of Saddleback College here in California. They have provided an entire basket or bundle of materials. And you'll see here, what is this license? Let me zoom in. This is a test, right? What does the BYSA stand for, right? So these are pre-algebra lessons. You can download them in these different ways. If you want to preview them, you can look at any of these lessons. These are two professors there that just do a great job with, presenting these lessons in kind of live video format. So this is, I'm going to go back to OER to Go, and it's not only algebra, but if you scroll through this list, these are all kinds of resources that are used around the world through an organization that I'm very familiar with, which is World Possible. And another one that you may know of is CK12. CK12 creates open education license textbooks, okay? So these are textbooks from 6th grade through high school in STEM. So again, you can open this up and look at these items, so you can look by the types of materials they give and review them on your own. And remember, you see the license right here. This one is a little more restrictive because they don't want you to sell these things. It doesn't mean you can't use them. It just means they don't want you to sell them. But it's telling you exactly how you can use this information. And I see the OpenStax has been posted. That's a great resource. Usually that's higher ed for college. Sometimes that doesn't work quite so well for adult learners because they're a little bit too high language-wise. But OER to Go is kind of one of my favorite places just to see, what are people contributing. Another one out of California that you can look at is Cool4Ed. And Cool4Ed is a collaboration between the universities, the state universities, and the community colleges for finding resources. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but they have resources on how to find it. They showcase new materials that their professors create. They have a whole section on OER resources and ideas. So there's another one. The next one that I like that's a little rougher, but it has a great tool to create your own OER with OpenAuthor, and that is oercommons.org. And I'm not signed in yet, so I'll see if my group is still here. But one of my favorite things here is under Features Groups. This is the Adult Education Open Community. There are lots of stuff in here, and I'll tell you, not all of it is good, okay? But you can create and you can mark pieces that you find here in OER Commons, because you can search by subject, you can search by education level, and I want you to notice that OER put in adult education. And I think that's wonderful of them to do. There's issues with that, but at least you can refine some of your searches, and you can choose the standard that you need to go for. So there right now, they have North Dakota, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Common Core, Next Gen, Wyoming. So they have a lot of standards already here. But my favorite thing is this tool right here. You can create your own open educational resource. It's a wonderful tool. It's what's called WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. And you're then, you can create and do your own thing. The last couple of things I'm going to show you is, if nobody has ever heard of Mountain Heights Academy, it is a fully online high school. They offer all of their materials as open educational resources. Again, all of this stuff is in the PowerPoint, so you don't have to worry about writing all this down. I've also included a lot of other resources for research itself about OER, etc. So this is another thing I was talking briefly with Deborah about in terms of new regulations with public funds. I won't spend any time here, but it's something that you can look at because I know we're running out of time. But I hope I've kind of showed you the tip of the proverbial iceberg with looking at open educational resources, and even more particularly about licensing your own work so you inform others how your materials can be used, as well as you are informed about how others want you to use their work. So with that, I will say thank you. I really appreciate all of you attending. And just so you know that I practice what I preach, this presentation is licensed as an OER, and you are free to take it and use it as you see fit. Thank you, Deb.
Thank you. Thank you, Penny, very, very much.